As I near the end of my college years, the library has become my second home. The scent of old paper, the gentle hum of fluorescent lights, and the occasional clatter of keyboards all form the background music of my final semester. It feels like the walls of this place have watched me grow, silently judging, silently encouraging. Lately, I've been here every day with two of my closest friends, Ethan and Marissa. We've formed a kind of unspoken pact, holding each other accountable as we struggle through the final stages of our capstone projects. Ethan is bold and brash, often storming into the study room with an energy that is equal parts inspiring and irritating. He demands results, hates excuses, and scoffs at anything that smells of weakness. Marissa, on the other hand, is sharp, methodical, and a bit cold. She scrutinizes every detail, never letting anything slide by. Her comments sting, but deep down, I know she's right. Our trio meets every afternoon at the same corner of the library. We'd sit by the tall windows overlooking the quad, a place both public and strangely intimate. Ethan would sprawl across two chairs, tapping his pencil incessantly as he talked about how our project lacked soul. Marissa would be hunched over her laptop, eyes darting between data sets, her mouth pursed in a permanent frown of dissatisfaction. I usually mediated between the two, trying to maintain a sense of calm in what often felt like a battleground. At first, the tension felt productive. We were pushing each other, challenging ourselves to think deeper and work harder. But over time, the atmosphere thickened. Ethan began to complain that Marissa was targeting him, always finding faults in his work, dismissing his ideas. He grew distant, sometimes leaving early or refusing to show up at all. One day, after a particularly tense exchange, he stormed out and didn't come back for days. Marissa seemed unfazed, continuing to work with a cold efficiency. She barely acknowledged Ethan's absence, and when I asked about it, she simply said, "He needs to toughen up." I should have pushed back harder, but I didn't. Instead, I buried myself in the project, trying to keep everything afloat. Then Marissa disappeared too. She stopped replying to messages, didn't show up to the library, and her dorm room was always locked. I reached out to her professors, even asked the resident advisor. No one had seen her. They looked at me with a mix of confusion and concern. I found it strange. How could no one notice she was gone? I began spending even more time alone at the library, falling into a rhythm that bordered on obsessive. I took over our entire table, arranging my notes, Ethan's scribbled drafts, and Marissa's spreadsheets into a fortress of productivity. But the silence was oppressive. I kept looking up, expecting to see Ethan's restless energy or Marissa's focused glare. I missed them. My advisor called me in for a meeting one day. He was kind, but his words were careful, measured. He asked if I was feeling overwhelmed. He mentioned that a few faculty members had expressed concern about me. I laughed it off, insisting that I was fine. Just tired, just stressed, just lonely. He asked me who I was working with. I told him about Ethan and Marissa, and for a moment he just stared. Then he said, "I thought you were doing this project alone." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls closing in. My phone had no messages. My email was empty. I opened the group chat, our group chat, but there were no replies from either of them. Just my messages, my reminders, my jokes. The next day, I returned to the library and sat at our table. The light through the window seemed too bright, the silence too loud. I pulled out Ethan's notes and Marissa's laptop. I stared at them, willing some memory to make sense of this. Then I noticed something. The handwriting on Ethan's pages. It matched mine. Not just similar, identical. The loops, the pressure, the spacing. I flipped through Marissa's spreadsheets. The formatting, the formulas, even the file names, they all mirrored my habits. I opened a blank document and began typing, trying to trace back how this all started. I wrote for hours, recounting every meeting, every conversation, every argument. I wrote until my fingers ached. And then it hit me. There was no Ethan, no Marissa. There never had been. They were me. They had always been me. Ethan was the fire in my belly, the voice that demanded perfection and refused to tolerate failure. Marissa was the critic, the cold intellect that dissected everything with surgical precision. And I, whatever that meant anymore, had constructed them to keep myself afloat. Maybe it started as a coping mechanism, a way to externalize the pressure and make the loneliness bearable. Maybe I had been alone all along, and my mind fractured them into being because I couldn't carry the weight of my own expectations. I don't know when the lines blurred. I don't know when I stopped seeing the truth. But now I sit alone in the library, surrounded by echoes of people who never existed. Sometimes I still hear Ethan's sarcastic laugh, or see Marissa's narrowed eyes when I make a mistake. They feel real. They were real, to me. And maybe that's the scariest part. Because if I could believe in them so completely, if I could craft entire histories, entire dynamics, what else have I convinced myself of? What else isn't real? That's the thought that keeps me up now. Not the loss of friends, not the pressure of graduation, but the gnawing uncertainty of my own mind, of the possibility that I've been living in a carefully constructed illusion all along. And if that's true, then who am I really? And what part of me is writing this now?